may be on the court, but his arrival is shaping the Fever just as much as any player trade. With his NBA and G League background, Dozier brings a rare depth of experience to a WNBA franchise, and Indiana's early offseason hiring speaks volumes about where their priorities lie. He's not stepping into a broken system. He's enhancing a team that just added 3 crucial new pieces, each selected to complement Caitlin Clark's game and elevate the overall roster. And with Porter, Keith remaining on staff despite injury, the coaching infrastructure now mirrors the strategic and built to win.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
Where many teams focus purely on talent acquisition, the Fever are building parallel tracks, combining player movement with internal development at the highest level. That dual focus is the backbone of sustainable success. Dozier's role isn't about flashy moments. It's about consistent, customized growth. It's the kind of behind-the-scenes investment that doesn't just support stars like Clark. It turns them into generational forces. Caitlin Clark finally has the support she needs, and it's coming from every direction. The Indiana Fever just set off a league-wide shockwave with 3 major trades and a coaching upgrade that's putting every other WNBA front office on notice. For a team long stuck in rebuild mode, these are not the kinds of moves you make if you're just hoping to be better next season. These are the kinds of moves you make when you're trying to win now and win for years to come. Let's start with the trades, because that's where this story breaks wide open. The first deal brought in veteran leadership, a seasoned star who knows what it takes to lead a team through adversity and into postseason contention. This isn't a bench filler or locker room morale booster. This is someone with the resume, the presence, and the skill to steady the ship when things get chaotic. That's exactly what the Fever have been missing, a player who can anchor the team alongside Clark and guide the younger core with consistency. The second trade landed a young defensive specialist, and that wasn't just a nice-to-have, it was a need. With Clark operating as the offensive centerpiece, she's constantly drawing the league's toughest defensive matchups and the most aggressive game plans. Every night, teams are testing her limits, forcing her into high-pressure situations and trying to run. The addition of a lockdown defender takes pressure off Clark by adding balance to the backcourt and giving the Fever a reliable weapon to neutralize opposing guards. The third trade? That's the curveball. The kind of unexpected, league-altering move that doesn't always show its full value right away, but changes everything. Whether it's a high-upside prospect, a strategic asset for future moves, or a player whose versatility adds new layers to the lineup, this was the kind of acquisition that signals strategic depth. It wasn't flashy, but it was smart. It showed that Indiana isn't just reacting to last season. They're planning for the next 5. These 3 trades work together. They weren't made in isolation. They were clearly part of a broader strategy, one centered on making Caitlin Clark the centerpiece of a functioning, competitive system. Not a solo act, not a marketing play, a real basketball engine. But Indiana didn't stop at trades. The organization pulled off something even more telling, a complete recalibration of its coaching infrastructure, headlined by the hiring of Rob Dozier. If you're not familiar with Dozier, that's exactly why this is a brilliant move. He's not a headline name, but his resume runs deep. NBA, G League grind, time spent working with the Washington Wizards. This is someone who understands how to get results fast, and not from just elite prospects, but from role players, late-round picks, and players on the edge of rosters. His specialty? One-on-one skill development. Focused, personalized work that elevates individual talent and pushes players into the next tier of performance. That's exactly what the Fever needed. They didn't just need more drills. They needed structure. They needed NBA-level attention to detail, and they got it. Caitlin Clark is already elite. No question. But this league doesn't wait around. Every team is adapting to her. Every coach is studying her film. What Dozier brings is a development system that keeps her ahead of the curve, working on her stamina, her reads, her ability to break traps, and her in-game adaptability. It's about more than just keeping up. It's about staying unpredictable, staying efficient, and staying dominant. And Dozier's impact doesn't stop at Clark. Aaliyah Boston is still early in her career and already showing all-star potential. Kelsey Mitchell has been a cornerstone, but this is her chance to level up. Lexi Hull, still finding her place, now has access to the kind of training that turns potential into production. With Dozier and the right developmental system in place, no one on this roster gets left behind. Then there's Keith Porter, still on staff despite his Achilles injury. That continuity is important. They toss out what was working. They build on it. Keeping Porter while adding Dozier creates a coaching tandem that blends familiarity with fresh perspective. Porter knows the team. He's earned the trust of the players. Dozier brings new systems, NBA training methods, and a focus on long-term growth. Together, they form a team that's rare in the WNBA. Two coaches fully focused on making players better, not just managing minutes or running drills. This isn't theoretical development. It's tailored, structured, measurable. Rob Dozier. And if wait until the offseason was over to get this emotion. All of this happened early, right as the offseason started. That matters. Every extra day of structured training, every early integration with new players, every meeting between staff and roster, that's time other teams haven't used. That's an edge. What we're seeing here is a complete shift in how the Fever operate. It's no longer about surviving until the next draft. It's about maximizing what they already have. They're not just collecting talent. They're building a culture, one rooted in resilience, preparation, and execution. This also marks a major pivot in how the organization views development. Hiring someone like Dozier, with NBA and G League pedigree, shows that the front office understands something critical. Winning comes from growth, not just recruitment. In a league as compact as the WNBA, where rotations are tight and margins are slim, is the only sustainable competitive edge. And Indiana is clearly aiming to own that space. There's another layer here, organizational synergy. Rob Dozier's background with the Wizards and his familiarity with the G League isn't just about coaching techniques. It opens the door for collaboration, cross-team knowledge, resource sharing between the Fever, the Pacers, and the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. That's not fluff. That's structure. That's data, scouting insights, and training models that have already been battle-tested in the NBA ecosystem, now being used to strengthen a WNBA team that's hungry for a new identity. These moves, trades, coaching, resource integration, they're all connected. This isn't a team throwing darts at a board. This is a calculated reset, a serious, high-level overhaul of how a professional basketball organization should function. Caitlin Clark now has the pieces around her to succeed. But what's more important, everyone on the roster now has the support they need to get better. That's the true power shift. Because if this coaching staff can get more out of every player, not just the top scorers, Indiana becomes a different kind of team. A team with depth, with options, with control. And it's happening in a moment when the league is exploding in popularity. More fans, more coverage, more pressure. The WNBA isn't the same league it was 5 years ago. Teams can't afford to be behind. Indiana, for the first time in a long time, isn't just catching up, they're trying to lead. There's still work to do. Roster chemistry takes time. Systems need refining. But this isn't about perfection. It's about direction. And finally, the Fever are pointed in the right one. If you've been waiting for Indiana to stop wasting its potential like this video, if you're seeing how this changes not just next season, but the whole future of the franchise, share it. And if you're locked in to see whether this bold new era delivers the wins it's promising, subscribe. Because this version of the Indiana Fever isn't just exciting. It's finally real. And the reality is, this version of the Indiana Fever looks nothing like the one we've seen in recent years. Not on paper, not in execution, and definitely not in attitude. For the first time in a long time, the Fever aren't just moving. They're moving with purpose. This isn't a patch-up job. This is a foundational reset. And it starts with what they've done around Caitlin Clark. Because when she was drafted, the excitement was off the charts. People were calling it a new era. She was a generational star, a media magnet, and a ticket-selling machine. But deep down, there was a quiet concern. Would the Fever give her enough to work with? That concern is starting to fade. They didn't just hand her the keys and say, drive. They went out and built her a car. They added veteran presence to give the team leadership and composure. They brought in a defensive specialist to cover her blind spots. They added a third, unexpected piece that changes the dynamics entirely. One that proves they're not operating on gut instincts, but on a broader vision. That's what's different about this front office now. They're no longer just thinking about next week's problem. They're thinking seasons ahead, planning around identity, structure, and sustainability. And again, none of this works without the right coaching. The hiring of Rob Dozier isn't just a line item in a press release. It's one of the smartest, most strategic moves this franchise has made in years. Segment: RD Rob Dozier. Why? Because Dozier isn't here to run the plays. He's here to elevate the players running them. Development-focused coaching is what separates the teams that hope from the teams that know. It's the difference between drafting talent and actually maximizing it. And in a league as competitive and condensed as the WNBA, there's no room for wasted potential. Every roster spot counts. Every improvement counts. That's where Dozier makes his impact. He specializes in tailored, skill-specific development, not just running through basic drills, but understanding each player's weaknesses, strengths, and ceilings, and crafting a plan that gets them there. It's personal, it's detailed, and it's what Indiana has been missing. Doesn't need to be reinvented. But she does need structure. She needs coaching that evolves with her, that anticipates how the league will try to stop her and prepares her with the tools to keep adapting. With Dozier, she has that now. Her shot selection, her stamina, her reads under pressure, all of it can go to the next level with someone who knows how to coach greatness without overhauling what already works. Caitlin Clark, and it's not just her. Aaliyah Boston is entering her prime years, and she's only getting started. With this coaching infrastructure, she can refine her range, expand her post options, and become an even more dominant presence in the paint. Kelsey Mitchell has been a steady scorer, but this system can help unlock more consistency and elevate her off-ball game. Lexi Hull can find her rhythm, improve her shooting mechanics, and earn a bigger role. Everyone has a path forward now, not just a superstar. That's the power of investing in real development. But development doesn't exist in a vacuum. It works best when it's paired with structure and continuity. That's why keeping Keith Porter on staff, even while recovering from Achilles' injury, was a subtle but powerful move. They could have easily moved on. Instead, they showed loyalty, trust, and respect for what he brings to the team dynamic. Now, you've got a dual coach set up on the development side. Porter knows the players. He's been part of their growth, so brings in new blood, new systems, and NBA-level refinement. It's the perfect combination of familiarity and innovation. And it shows that Indiana isn't just trying to catch up with the rest of the league. They're trying to surpass it. There's also something to be said about when all this happened. These moves didn't come in a late summer panic or after a failed playoff push. They came early, right out of the gate, before most teams even knew what they were doing. That kind of timing matters. It shows confidence, readiness, and above all, planning. This isn't a reaction. This is a blueprint. Rob, Dozier, every step the Fever are taking now is laying the groundwork for long-term success. And not just on the court, either. These decisions are reshaping how the Fever are viewed across the league. For free agents, Indiana starts to look like a franchise that takes player growth seriously. For rookies, it becomes a place where you're not just expected to perform. You're coached into performing. And when you talk about identity in sports, this is how it's built. Not just with flashy signings or emotional locker room speeches, but with structure, with systems, with the kind of support staff that most people don't even see, but that players feel every day. That's how you shift a franchise from on the rise to in control. And here's where it gets real. This doesn't just affect Indiana. It affects the entire WNBA. Because when one team makes this kind of leap, when they go all in on coaching precision and early strategic trades, the rest of the league has to respond. The Fever aren't just trying to keep up with the Aces or Liberty anymore. They're building the kind of machine that could compete with them. And in a league that's finally getting the visibility and respect it deserves, that kind of competition is exactly what it needs. You can see the momentum. More fans, more coverage, more pressure. And the Fever aren't shrinking from it. They're stepping into it. They're not being dragged by the league's rising tide. They're trying to be the current. That's why these moves matter. Not just for Clark, not just for Boston, but for the entire organization. Because this is the beginning of something sustainable. Something calculated. Something bigger than just a star player's success story. This is how the Indiana Fever go from being a team with hype to a team with weight. See Caitlin Clark. So let's recap. 3 traits, each with a clear purpose. A veteran leader, a defensive anchor, a strategic piece that adds flexibility and future options. A coaching hire, Rob Dozier, with NBA and G League expertise, brought in specifically to focus on skill development, one-on-one improvement, and player elevation. A decision to keep Keith Porter, reinforcing continuity, honoring institutional knowledge, and adding coaching depth. All of it happening early. All of it connected. For a franchise that's been wandering, this is finally a path. For Caitlin Clark, this is the support she deserves. And for fans, this is what buying in looks like. And here's the part that no one's really talking about yet, but they will. These moves from the Indiana Fever, they're not just smart. They're disruptive. This isn't just a team trying to improve around the edges. This is a franchise that's gone from passive to aggressively intentional in a matter of months. And the rest of the league should be paying attention. Because what do you do when the team that finished near the bottom starts acting like a contender before the season even starts? You rethink everything. Let's go back to those trades for a second. Every single one of them represents a strategic shift, a refusal to stay in the cycle of mediocrity. Getting a veteran who's been through the fire? That's a locker room stabilizer. That's someone who's seen postseason pressure, who doesn't flinch in tight moments, and who knows how to mentor without undermining. Caitlin Clark, for all her ability, is still in her rookie window. She's not supposed to carry a franchise by herself. That's not sustainable. But now she doesn't have to, because that veteran presence, whoever they brought in, is going to share that burden on the floor, in the locker room, in the film room. That move alone makes the Fever more dangerous. Then there's the defensive specialist. That piece changes games. Clark doesn't need to be in every passing lane. She doesn't need to spend 4 quarters exhausting herself chasing around guards. The defensive load is finally being shared. That means better energy management, smarter rotations, and fewer breakdowns late in games. The exact areas where young teams tend to fall apart. And that third, unexpected trade, that's the one that shows real front office maturity. It's easy to plug holes. It's harder to build options. To take a swing on a player who may not fit perfectly today, but whose presence forces other teams to adjust. That move wasn't reactive. It was anticipatory. And that tells us everything about where the Fever's mindset is right now. They're not playing checkers anymore. They're playing chess. But none of this works without the coaching foundation they've laid underneath it. The Rob Dozier hire might be the most underrated move of the offseason, and it's probably going to end up being the most impactful. You don't just bring in an NBA coach for show. Dozier's background with the G League and the Wizards means he's dealt with every kind of player. High draft picks, role players, long shots. He's had to figure out how to squeeze more out of athletes who are already good and push them toward great. That's what he brings to Indiana. Precision, process, patience. Dozier is going to sit down with every player and help them refine the tiny things that win games. Shooting angles, defensive stances, off-ball movement, transition reads. The little stuff that doesn't make headlines but absolutely shows up in the win column. Caitlin Clark's not just going to be a better shooter or passer. She's going to be a more complete professional. She'll read the floor faster, burn out less, get stronger mentally. And her teammates? They'll follow that same arc. Because this isn't development by accident. It's development by design. And with Keith Porter staying on staff, the Fever now have dual lenses on their roster. Porter knows the team, their habits, their personalities, their rhythms. Dozier brings outside innovation, new methods, and a different set of expectations. Together, they create a high-performance environment that encourages accountability without losing cohesion. That kind of structure? Rare. That kind of foresight, even rarer. Most WNBA teams operate on tight budgets, limited staffing, and condensed development windows. Indiana's saying, we're not letting that limit us. They're building a full ecosystem around their players. They're investing in the kind of internal infrastructure that turns potential into sustained success. TC Tamika Catchings, and when you zoom out, the timing couldn't be better. The WNBA is experiencing a surge in viewership, sponsorship, investment. The margin for error is shrinking. Teams that fall behind developmentally won't just miss the playoffs. They'll miss the moment. This moment, where the league is breaking into new markets, capturing new audiences, and finally getting the respect it's long deserved. The Fever aren't just trying to be along for the ride. They're trying to lead it. This all feels calculated. Not cold or mechanical, but deliberate, thought through. For once, it's not chaos. Not a patchwork season. Not a reliance on lottery luck. It's a plan, executed early, backed by experienced coaching, powered by smart trades, and supported by a franchise that, finally, understands the weight of what it has. Caitlin Clark is a generational player. That's not an opinion. That's fact. Her presence alone elevates everything. Revenue, attention, competitiveness. But without the right infrastructure around her, that potential risks being wasted. Indiana clearly knows this now, and they're building fast to match her timeline. This is the most complete the Fever have looked in years. Not just on the court, as a system. A true basketball organization with a defined identity, and a real future. If you've been skeptical in the past, it's understandable. The results haven't always matched the rhetoric. But this time, the actions are speaking first. The pieces are moving into place. The work is happening early, and it's happening fast. This isn't about hype anymore. It's about execution. And the Indiana Fever are finally showing they can do both. Like this video, if you're watching this team, flip the script. Drop a comment if you're seeing the difference in how they're building. And subscribe if you want to follow every step of this transformation, because what's happening in Indiana isn't just another off-season shuffle. It's a full-scale shift, and they're just getting started.